So, our main topic, and I'm glad I brought Don on for this, because I'm sure you have a lot to say. Uh, but in 1989, way before 1992's X-Men the Animated Series, we got our first pilot of an animated series that never got made. Just the pilot, and it got aired. What's funny about this is it got aired a lot, and of course, talking about Pryde of the X-Men, and Margaret Loesch was the producer behind it. She worked at the newly formed. She worked at the Marvel Studios animated division, like for years, and she said we should be doing an X-Men cartoon. Remember in the early '80s, we got Spider-Man and His
Mm-hmm.
Amazing Friends, and we had some other uh, Marvel cartoons, and like we should be doing X-Men. So they produced this pilot, they put it on air, and yet they claim that it didn't get enough attention to order a full uh, series. Well,
It wasn't very.
she leaves Marvel and goes to the newly formed Fox Kids. I think that's what they called it, Fox Kids. And while she's there, she talks them into doing an X-Men cartoon, and then we get X-Men the Animated Series. So she got two shots at this, and the second one is the one that really took off and set the tone for the Marvel cartoons for the '90s. But yeah, it came out in 1989, and it's funny because I saw this then like a bunch of times. I think I was in eighth grade when this came out, and I thought, oh, they got a new X-Men animated series, and I didn't realize at first it was the same episode being shown over and over again. And yeah, so do you guys remember how old you were and when you first saw this?
I was 11 and I saw it on VHS. I never saw this when it was broadcast. And again, this is the world of syndication. So sometimes
Yeah,
stuff, you saw stuff, sometimes you didn't see stuff. I remember they had Marvel Action Hour on one of the low-powered UHF stations, WPWR TV channel 50 in Chicago, which
right.
didn't have any good until they acquired. Did not watch that channel growing up. So I never saw it. The first time I saw it was at the video store shelf at Ken's World, and I never had Wolverine for life. And I was so confused because again, I'm 11 at this point. I'm an avid. This is 1991. I'm an avid X-Men reader. So I was totally perplexed. So yeah, that was my first experience. It was on VHS. I did not see any of the airings.
How about you, Don?
And this it came out when I was 9 years old, and I do remember flashes of seeing it when it aired on TV. But then I did find it on VHS, and then a couple of years later, and then I was able to connect the dots. Oh, okay, I've seen this before. But I wore that fucking VHS out, boy. I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. But I do remember again flashes of actually seeing it when it aired on TV, but really didn't start getting into it, playing it over and over and over again until I had it on VHS myself. When I was like, I think I was like 11 too. Because I was like, oh, this is what I saw. Because I could never, I don't know, I could just remember, I could clearly remember the images, but didn't know where they were from. And then I got the VHS. I'm like, sweet. Oh wait, there's only one fucking episode.
You know what the real shame, Dave? How old? So you were in eighth grade. Don and I were a little bit younger. You know what the real shame is? The animation is so much better on this than the eventual
Wonderful.
show we got. It's really good. It's that Sunbow stuff. You could tell it was the same company that was doing GI Joe at the time because Sunbow took over the GI Joe license just after I believe that this show faltered. So they were good. They made good quality cartoons. Unlike
And if
Sunbow.
you like G.I. Joe, all you have to do is close your eyes while Cyclops talks, and you'll hear Duke.
That's true. 8-Bit Ray says it aired after reruns of the Star Wars Holiday Special. Sir, you are Mandela affecting that. That is not a real thing. The Star Wars Holiday Special aired one time. Drew says, I thought Wolverine was Australian for the longest time. If that's your first exposure to Wolverine, it totally
Yep.
makes sense. Why?
Well,
Why?
because here's why, and I thought the same thing, Drew. They had him on Spider-Man. The
That's
X-Men
right. He's
were on the
Australian.
Spider-Man
Yeah,
show.
yeah. He was Australian
Yeah.
on that too. I forgot about that. Why that also?
Yeah, like, okay, there are a lot of weird choices that were made, I think, for this show. So it also follows a lot of the tropes that the animated series follows in the beginning, but it's told in a much different way. Obviously, like in the animated series, you get Jubilee coming in, and she's the newcomer that where you learn the stories. She's the in for the audience. In this, it's Kitty Pryde. That's why the episode's called Pride of the X-Men.
Well, there's the reason for that is because when the show's being made in 1989, right? You're talking essentially the 1986 X-Men lineup, and
Yeah.
Kitty Pryde joins. Don, correct me if I'm wrong. In this 82, 81, Kitty Pryde joins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
82.
Okay, 82. So, and that was a big entry point character for a lot. But Claremont would get bored with stuff, and Jubilee is pretty much a Jim Lee character. Right, first Asian American X-Men, like he's expressed how much
Yeah.
he was a big part of that, and the Jim Lee X-Men were massive in
Yes.
1992. So again, at that point, Kitty's in Caliber, and she's almost a forgotten character because again, a lot of Caliber characters were like her and Nightcrawler and Captain Britain. They're just kind of like shuttered off, like they're characters that almost like it seemed like Claremont had gotten bored writing. So by the time X-Men gets huge, they're in a universal essentially.
Right.
Drew says, why is Wolverine in the jungle not a force in the Ant-Man, the animated thing? The answer to that is because it looks cool.
Yeah. And
that is the
also
answer.
a lot of in the original opening for the animated series, a lot of them were just on plain backgrounds. Like there wasn't a lot going on. They really amped that up in X-Men 97. So yeah. I don't remember him being in the jungle. I have to look at that again.
They got fun and games. They got everything you want. I barely know the name.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
And of course, the show also opens with something they got rid of in the animated series, which is Stan Lee narrating the show.
Hey, true believer, because that's what Spider-Man. I believe both Spider-Mans had that Stan Lee intro, like this.
Yes.
The solo Spider-Man 81 and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which is so confusing. Same song, same intro, essentially.
Basically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's Ray?
Drew's 8-Bit Ray says 90s X-Men was through the eyes of Jubilee, who essentially is the Watcher, right? Sure. I'll go with that. Sure.
It's just a trope that's used so much in writing.
Yeah, strange. You especially with the teenager and teenage girl, it's pretty traditional with the X-Men. They've done it multiple times. Joss Whedon did it with Armor, right? Like it's not the first time. Like everyone wants to add their own version of Kitty Pryde, and they all falter because Kitty Pryde rules.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's written well at all in this episode either.
Is anyone written well in this episode, Dave?
The only one that feels somewhat true to character is Nightcrawler. Other than that,
Nightcrawler. Yep.
Yeah, I'll give you Nightcrawler. It's
well,
not.
no, I mean, Colossus is okay, but he doesn't do much.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just kind of there. Let's be honest. This is not a good piece of animation. The X-Men 92 is significantly better as characterization. But again, it's just a pilot.
I mean,
a pilot's meant to be a launching.
I mean, I get what you're saying about that, but to me, when I put both of them side by side, I preferred the Pride of the X-Men. I was always so bitter that this did not continue because of the roster. Like Colossus is in it, so I mean, obviously Nightcrawler. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Okay, but here's a question, and Don, you're the one to answer this. The whole lineup that's on this show is Colossus, Nightcrawler, Dazzler,
everyone in the arcade game. Yep.
Cyclops and
Storm.
Yes. Right? And it feels like
it's the 85 lineup.
Is it the 85 lineup? Okay.
It's the 85, 86.
And that's the thing. This is my X-Men right here.
Yeah.
Good era.
That's the thing. Like when I got into X-Men, it's because of this show. Again, at first it was Flashes. Then we get the toy line. Then we get the X-Men video game.
The arcade and the home version.
And then the arcade game, right? Like the arcade, like this is what made me X-Men fan.
This is also the first one when Toy Biz gets the Marvel life 90. Also the X-Men that got released was this version. So this to our generation was the X-Men that was marketed to us. But what happens is Jim Lee's X-Men, because I say Jim Lee because Chris Claremont will tell you he took the creative at the end of that, like the arc of X-Men, like adjectiveless X. But by the end of it, Lee runs out the door, and it's Lee and John Byrne. So I mean, like that version of X-Men go over and became massive.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Superhero Speak podcast. And don't forget to watch us live every Sunday night right here on this channel.
While you're here, hit the subscribe button and click the bell for notifications so you won't miss out on any of our great upcoming content.
Speaking of content, don't forget to check out our website, superheroespeak.com, where you can find the podcast, links to our social media, merch, comic reviews, and so much more. That's superheroespeak.com.
Thanks for watching, and don't let your cape be caught in the door. See you next time.